is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Well, back here on Notsam Wrestling, one of my favorite people to talk to, not just about wrestling, but just one of my favorite people to talk to in general. And I feel like, thank God for podcasts, because otherwise, you just don't get around to talking to people anymore in this day and age. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Funches is here. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, Sam. It's just good to hear your voice, man. Seeing you all over the place. You becoming bigger star every day. I'm happy. I'm just glad we're still friends.
Oh, please. Yeah, right. Well, like, I have kids in my house, so like I feel like I don't miss you at all. I hear your voice through a troll. Like in my house all the time, so I wouldn't worry about anybody else becoming a star. But Ron, it is weird though. The thing about podcasts is, and I feel like wrestling is sort of kind of starting to figure this out, but comedy figured this out first, that podcasting becomes a really good excuse to just catch up with people and sit there and talk for an hour or two, however long your podcast is, that you wouldn't normally get to do.
Yeah, I mean, people just want to connect with you. And I think the thing I find out the most, because I've been starting to do a lot of Twitch streaming and playing video games with people, and then a lot of people on my Twitch stream come through and they go, "Oh, did you listen to the newest Your Mom's House or Rogan thing?" And I was like, "No, I don't listen to comedy podcasts." But I think if you have an interest in any type of world, like, for me, that is the wrestling podcast, because I'm not in that world. And so it excites me just hearing these old stories or these background information, the inside baseball of it excites me. And I think, comedians got into that pretty early, of just showing that behind the scenes and letting people fall in love with your personality more than just like your set and your jokes.
Do you have any specific era that you love behind the scenes stories about in wrestling? Like, for me, I think the reason why Bret Hart's book is my favorite wrestling book ever is because, like, when I was in high school, that's when the internet and wrestling kind of really started to merge. And that's when all of those behind the scenes stories started becoming just as commonplace as what was going on camera. So like the Attitude Era stuff is when I was like, okay, you start to get this idea. I mean, then, almost, I would say 90% of it is not true, but you do get this idea of here's what's going on behind the scenes, and this is who this writer is. And you start to, get the inside stuff. But like, growing up, like from 90 to 96, 97, there was no behind the scenes stories. Like I didn't have Meltzer's newsletter when I was a kid. So I'm sitting there and Bret Hart is as Bret Hart is presented to me, and Shawn Michaels is as Shawn Michaels is presented to me. And I feel like when I start getting into behind the scenes stories of the time when I was a kid before the internet was giant, that's when I'm just like, inundate me, give me more.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all drawn to, is what we loved as a child, and hearing the background stories, whether it's hearing, things about like Doink the Clown or Earthquake, and find out how interesting these backgrounds were that I did not know. Those are always great. But for me, I actually find myself being more interested in even a little bit further from when I was, before I even started wrestling. Like, I like hearing about the territory days and just kind of this wild west of a group of renegades and stuff, and the stories out of Puerto Rico and things like that. Things like that really excite me, because it reminds me a lot of like bar comedy, like before.
Right. Like before there's like a central industry around it, when you're just like, I think if I put these pieces together, I might be able to make a buck doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just a bunch of traveling gypsies.
Is there anybody, like, you brought up Earthquake and Doink. And like, for me, I feel like in my adult life, I appreciate Matt Bourne Doink so much more than I did as a kid. Like, when I was a kid, you recognize the character, and really the same with Earthquake. Like, you just recognize this big earthquake monster guy. And it's not until I was older that I was actually watching Earthquake matches and like marveling at how good he was, and I never realized it. Are there guys like that for you that you can go back and watch now and be like, oh my God, I didn't even realize what I was watching as a kid?
Yeah, for me, a lot of times though, it's like when I go back and watch these old WCW pay-per-views from the mid and late '90s, where they were doing a lot of the Japanese crossover, and you're getting these matches that are awesome with like Ultimo Dragon or Nagata. And at the time, I was just like, I don't know who the fuck these guys. Boo! Where's Disco Inferno? Where's Alex Wright?
Yeah, man, if you're not dancing, I don't want to see you. Where's the booty man? Okay, I know. Eugene, what? No.
But I think also like a lot of the the Hills and the big man. Like I find myself really going back and watching a lot of like Bam Bam Bigelow's work and just how athletic he truly was. He was like, I mean, really ahead of his time with a lot of the work he was doing.
Yeah, Bam Bam Bigelow is like outrageously good. Like you really like anybody who grew up in that era that hasn't fully appreciated like how athletic he was. I mean, has got to go back because I sit there and I'm like, man, he should have been so much bigger after that LT match. Like they just really, that was one of those things where I feel like they got him to this place where they had nothing to do with him except turn him into a babyface. And then once he was a babyface, they had nothing to do with him, period.
Yeah.
And it was
yeah,
just
and
like,
there's not many guys with flaming skull tattoos that I consider, like, I want to get behind his skull. Like, no, he should be a heel. Luna should be next to him.
yeah.
They both look insane. I mean, that is just a tremendous package, the two of them together. So
Yeah. Yeah, that Luna thing, like, it's so fun. I mean, you talk about people you don't appreciate. I was watching SummerSlam '94, and it was really for the Bret Hart Owen Hart cage match because like everybody remembers how great that was. But like I'm flipping through matches, and I'm like, I forgot this was one of those pay-per-views where they did Alundra Blaze versus Bull Nakano, and you talk about somebody who I wish I had appreciated more. Bull Nakano being on WWE pay-per-view of that era is like, I can't believe that they snuck this one in. Like, I can't believe that real wrestling was snuck in to this era of sports entertainment.
yeah, well, real women's wrestling, which is
Yeah.
even double. But yeah, she's one of my favorites of all time. I have a T-shirt of hers that I burned a hole right in the middle of the chest because I was smoking a joint and then I let it burn too long. But I will not get rid of the shirt because I can't find another one. I just keep wearing it because who else is walking around? Some wrestling T-shirts can help you make friends. I was tweeting about it the other day with all the Blue Meanie tweeting about Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, and it reminded me of the time where I was going to this business meeting with my manager and I was wearing this Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert t-shirt, and then this custodian just runs out of the hall and he's like 62 65-year-old guy and he's just like, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, what do you know about Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert?
Yeah.
we had a conversation. It was great.
And that's one of those perfect shirts too. Because like if you're wearing like a Stone Cold shirt and people are like, oh, I love Stone Cold, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Everybody loves Stone Cold. But when somebody comes up to you and goes, I love Eddie Gilbert, and you're like, tell me about Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah.
And when that person can have the conversation, you're like, okay, we can have a conversation.
Yeah, let's pull up a chair. Let's sit there.
Yeah, that's my favorite. There's always that, like, I feel like that's why I like talking to you. I like talking to you and like Dan Soder and guys like that and Tony Hinchcliffe, like the comedians who really love wrestling, because you can have those conversations. Like there's always people that are like, yeah, I'm a wrestling fan. And you bring up like Eddie Gilbert will be one of those bridges that we can't cross. Where like you'll bring up a name and you'll realize like, oh, I don't think you know what a wrestling fan is. Like you're not.
Yeah.
You're
like
not.
when Cardi B tweets about liking Eddie Guerrero and Booker T and stuff. It's like, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So you watch it for a few years as a child, but who do you like now? You know, like
right. That convinces me. Okay, so it was on in the background a couple of times when you were growing up. That's all you've proven to me so far. Because like, you know what I mean? Like you get a lot, you're Cardi B. You get a pass across a lot of stuff, but like, I feel okay being a gatekeeper in this wrestling world. Like, you know,
absolutely. I mean, and we want people to come in, absolutely. Yes. But we see so much people pretend all the time. I get offered to do things like that, where I get offered to go do like UFC things and of that nature because I like wrestling. They assume I like UFC, and I go like, no, no, no. I like it when they're friends and they're pretending to.
Yeah. When you go onto an MMA podcast and you go like, guys, here's my MMA hot take. Not enough performance.
Yes. Where are the promos?
Yeah. And you're like, well, I like Conor McGregor. That's like the wrestling fan trying to sneak into the MMA world. Like their thing is like, well, I mean, I like Conor McGregor, so I like UFC.
Yeah.
Like, well, what do you think
I love
of
Conor? I love Ronda Rousey.
Right. Brock's the greatest of all time. Am I right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Shayna Baszler.
Yeah.
You're like, wait.
You guys know Jessamine Duke? So what have you been doing with your time? I feel like the one thing about this quarantine stuff is like we all, whether we're keeping busy or not, and I know you are keeping busy, but you still find little pockets of time, because I'm keeping busy, but I still find little pockets of time to dip back in. And I find myself, that's my distraction, right? Like I dip back into horror movies and I dip back into wrestling, and I find these little things on the network. Like lately, my thing has been, I've been going back and watching, they just put up a ton of the ECW like commercial tape releases, like before they had pay-per-view and they would just put out the home videos. They put up a ton of those. So
I bought a few of those at Suncoast Video when as a teenager.
Yeah. Had to hide them from mom because this is not like the other wrestling.
But I've been watching, like I said, a lot of mid-90s WCW, going through and watching these tournaments. WCW versus the World tournaments that I'd never watched before. And New Japan shows have been back running, so I've been watching a fair amount of those as well. And most of my deep dives have been in I would say early 90s, and then watching Superstars as well.
How crazy is it? You're talking about the cruiserweight division in WCW, and I mean, like people bring it up and it does get talked about, but I still feel like it's underrated because I also didn't care, man. Like today, if you ask me, because I've rewatched it 100 times now, and I feel like Halloween Havoc, I think 97, Rey versus Eddie is literally top 5 matches of all time. Like it's among the greatest matches that ever happened. But when it happened live, I feel like I was sitting there going like, okay, come on, guys. When's the NWO coming out? Like, enough. Let's get through this. It is so wild how much. And like you said, I mean, you go back earlier than that, and like the Worlds Collide pay-per-view that WCW promoted, where it kind of exposed the world to AAA. Like, it's amazing how much of that stuff was happening pre-internet right under our noses.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I then think about it a lot with comedy again, and it makes me kind of excited. Where you're like, wow, like it's just kind of human nature to undervalue things for a long time, and then later on we're like, oh, they're amazing, they're awesome, they're wonderful, Yeah. And it's fun to go back and watch. Like sometimes it's weird, but it'll give me motivation where I'm like, oh, my set didn't go that well, or this or that didn't go that well, and I'll go back and watch an early 90s thing and see a whole crowd sitting on their hands for Rey Mysterio and just be like, that's a Hall of Famer. That's one of the best that ever did it. And they just haven't caught up to him yet.
Right.
And I like watching that. It's really cool to see. And I like watching the development and things. In that Worlds Collide pay-per-view, there's like a interview with Eddie Guerrero, and he can't talk for crap. He's just, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah. One of those promos where they go, and 6 times throughout the sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to be there, and when I get out to that ring, and I'm gonna really give it to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my very best. It's like it's a Stardom promo. And it's just cool because then you go like, wow, we're so used to just judging people as they're fully formed, and you remember Eddie when he's winning the world title and how confident and how funny and stuff it looks. But you go like, everybody needs time to develop. Look at what you turned into. You used to be such a nerdy, scrawny guy, and now you're a lumberjack of a man.
Yeah, who knew, right? Yeah, no, it is true that you got to watch these guys as they develop, and that's true about the greats that stayed true to themselves. Like you watch, and people like Ray and Eddie specifically. I think Eddie is one of the greatest examples of it because Eddie got to the top of the mountain. Eddie champion, beat Goldberg. For God's sakes, he's on Cardi B's Mount Rushmore. I think that's the greatest wrestling award you could possibly have. But that essence of Eddie Guerrero, like he didn't turn into something else. Like he's still that same Eddie Guerrero, even when he's at the top of the mountain. He's just really turned into this undeniable performer. And like you realize that in life, some people are just brought in. That's exactly who I want. I'm going to push him to the moon, and that's going to be it. And other people just decide, you know what? That's not the path that I'm on. I just have to go and make myself undeniable. And at that point, there's nothing that anybody can do about it. I'm at the top of the mountain, whether you put me here or not. And that's
when it's most beautiful. That's Eddie. That's Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
a lot of these people. It's fun to watch, and you see people will be like, "Oh, I hate it. I don't like it." And it's just like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like he put in the work, he put in the time. He's himself. He's doing him.
Isn't it interesting that people will still, like, even if you did it yourself, and even if it was through hard work and years and years and years, and it's all you and you deserve it, people will still try to take it away and tear it down. People are still mad about it. They can't just say, like, look, whether I don't have to agree with it. I don't even have to be a fan of it. But you have to at least go, like, this is the journey and how it happened. Like, this is a pretty remarkable thing. This is a great sort of example of an inspiration for life in general. But people will still try to be like, well, no.
Well, I think the best way to put it is like whether you love it or you don't love it. You better learn to live with it because it's the best damn thing going today.
With the veins popping out in the neck. You know what my favorite part of that, the Ric Flair 30 for 30 was? When he was talking about that era and those promos. And he said, yeah, and then my wife would call me. And she'd say, Rick, why are you giving out your hotel room number on television? And I'd go, I don't know. He didn't even come up with an excuse. I don't know.
I was ad-libbing and it just came out.
I don't know. Rick, isn't that the actual hotel you're staying at? Yeah. Well, then why'd you mention it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
We can be too much.
Yeah. So when did you develop your appreciation for WCW? I mean, I remember, I think, was it a year ago? SummerSlam Brooklyn was last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a year ago. I feel like that might be the last time that I saw you, but I saw you all that weekend parading around New York City in that purple and gold WCW chalk line jacket, looking like $1 million. When did you become like a full on, like, you know what? I'm a WCW fan. Like when did you rediscover your love for what WCW brought to the table?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because when I was a fan, probably as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid, because I went to one of my best pay-per-view events I ever went to. I got to go to a Spring Stampede that had one of the, at least, I don't know if it was one of the last, but one of the late Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat matches.
Sure.
The Max Payne, Cactus Jack versus the Nasty Boys street fight.
Sounds
it was like
94? Sounds like 94?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, top to bottom, an excellent pay-per-view, like just tremendous pay-per-view. And that kind of started it. But I'd say, as you get older, and then you remember the late 90s of WCW, and then the fall apart, and you kind of get into that, you fall into that line of thinking that, oh, WCW was all a joke and it was always bad. But I think, the network, getting back when the network came back, and or when it started, and I started watching these old Nitros and Thunders when they added the Thunders again, and I could go back and go like, wow, like when I was a kid, I was real into the sports entertainment of the storylines of the whatever Hulk Hogan was up to, whatever the Ultimate Warrior was up to. But when I go back and as an adult, I go like, wow, the actual like mat work and the things that I really like are over here at WCW. All these hard hitting matches are over here at WCW, and it just was a different flavor of ice cream that maybe my palate wasn't ready to have at that time. But now I'm all about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pralines.
Put some rose water in my ice cream.
You just kept going back for strawberry. Well, no, I like pink strawberry. Like, it looks good. Like, strawberry with sprinkles. Strawberry with sprinkles. Strawberry with sprinkles. Yeah. Have you tried this green tea sorbet?
Yeah.
Like, actually, this really does cleanse the palate. It's very refreshing. I had no idea. Yeah, because WCW is so weird to look back in that era, because I'll go through stuff where I'm looking for bad wrestling to watch. Like, because there's a pleasure in watching terrible wrestling as well. And WCW is also the king of that. Like,
when I want to take a nap, put on that WCW greed. Put that greed on and put me right to sleep.
Yeah, it's like the very, very end of WCW. And also, like, the main event scene in WCW right before the NWO.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I have watched multiple times Uncensored 96, which is the Tower of Doom Alliance to End Hulkamania.
Is that the cover where it's all yellow and it's all the members of the dungeon? Yeah.
It's I mean, this is what boggles my mind, right? It's the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom and Zeus and the guy that played Bane in the Joel Schumacher Batman. And they've all joined in one force to destroy Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. And, I mean, wrestling logic would dictate that as you have to go through each opponent, you would start with the easy ones that would just whatever and end with the big, like, oh, how is this going to happen? The first opponents to Hulk Hogan and Macho Man are Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. That's the first. That's where we begin. And we end with Zeus and Bane. It's like, what are we doing, guys? And I'm just sitting there like, what are poor Ric Flair and Arn Anderson have got to be going, because this is literally only 2 years removed from you seeing Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat at Spring Stampede. 2 years later, Ric Flair is at the top of a cage as the kind of curtain jerker of the main event. And you're going like, what's he got to be thinking at that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it fun. I mean, that's what makes wrestling a lot of fun in general, is that if you follow it a lot like any TV show, you'd be like, okay, well, these are the natural decisions that are going to happen. But wrestling is so wonky for so many different reasons, with creative control, nepotism, this and that you go like, why did this happen? And that's what makes wrestling so fun.
Yeah, and I think more so than any other sort of TV show in the world, wrestling would just try something. They'll go, I don't know, we got to do something. Let's try this. And they'll just throw it.
Yeah, like, that's what we're seeing right now. They're like, get rid of the ropes. We don't need any ropes anymore.
We don't have an audience. Why do we need ropes?
Who are we keeping out?
Well, if you don't have rules, then why would there be ropes? I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea why there would be ropes. Yeah. Hey, how do we get Rey Mysterio off TV? Rip his eye out of his face.
It would be cool if Raw Underground ends up a lot like the actual movie Fight Club, where you find out it's not even like it's just going on in his head. It's not even like it's just a dream that Shane McMahon is having.
How amazing would it be if it's just Shane McMahon staring out a window. He's just rocking back and forth, staring out a window in the PC, and MVP just walks by like, I was never. Shane, are you back? Like, there's.
I would love it if they did that.
It's just all going on in Shane's head. I wonder how that would go. Like, if you were in the writer's room and you were like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. And I mean, do Raw Underground for 2 months. Every week for 2 months. Full-fledged storylines. And I mean, let's start getting absurdly ridiculous. And then slowly start turning it into like a Tony Soprano dream sequence.
Yeah, one week you just see a guy in the crowd with a hot dog costume. And you're just like, well, okay, well, that's a little different.
And then, you know, when it's time, you just look at Shane McMahon rocking back and forth, looking out a window. I love it, man. I'd be into it. I mean, you got to try stuff, right? You gotta get creative sometimes.
Oh, I'm all about it. See what works, see what doesn't work. You know, it got me tuning back in just to check it out and see it. I don't know, and I still don't know. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I hate it, but it's definitely different.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I got through and I was like, this is really. I mean, immediately it's like different, right? So it's offsetting. There's something about it that you're like, it's off-putting. You're like, what? But then you're like, wait a minute. I forgot that Dolph Ziggler is actually a really good wrestler. Like, I forgot he went to Kent State and he's actually kind of a badass dude. And wait a minute. Like, the Viking Raiders are not wrestling garbage monsters anymore. They're actually beating people up. Like, that's good for the Viking Raiders. And you're seeing, like, Lashley and MVP and Shelton Benjamin, like, looking like badasses again and beating people up. I'm like, there's a practical application for Raw Underground. This could be, this can be good.
Yeah, but I think it's a slippery slope, just like the cinematic matches to me, and that it obviously it won't work for every character,
right?
You know, and I don't think you want to see it. Like, you don't want it to ever be the majority of the show, because then it makes the other half of the show look weird, because it's like, why are these other matches taking 8 to 10 minutes and people are going all over and the matches in the underground are over in 2 minutes, because you know, it's kind of weird.
Well, I'll tell you exactly why, Ron. It ropes.
I forgot the healing power of ropes.
Ropes. The other matches have ropes, you see. So it's do you have what's your favorite and your least favorite of the cinematic matches that we've seen in this era?
Oh, easy. That's very easy. My favorite has been the Boneyard match.
Nice.
And then my least favorite was the Eye for an Eye match. Like, I
see. So you consider Eye for an Eye in the cinematic realm just because it was like you had to depart reality.
Well, and there was use of props and things of that nature. So I consider it a cinematic match. If you don't, I can pick another one as my least favorite, which then would be the swamp match. Although there were some parts I liked. I love a match that stops for a moment to have a 2-minute monologue.
Yeah, I do too. It's like when, you know, the scene stops halfway. You're probably wondering how I got here.
I would love it. I would love that if they would did that more. And just like you have Sheamus and Jeff Hardy, and Sheamus has Jeff Hardy down. He goes like, I don't know why I'm such a bully. I think it starts with my father.
Yeah. And really, Jeff Hardy wins, yes. But at the end of the day, Sheamus defeated himself. That's what we learned.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Okay, so I put the greatest wrestling match ever. I don't know if you heard that podcast, but I had a whole thing about it. My appreciation for it grew tremendously. I absolutely put it in the category of cinematic match. I started to, like, halfway through the match, I realized what it was. And I was like, oh, this is not a match. You're not supposed to rank this on, like, you know, the way we just said Rey and Eddie is one of the greatest matches of all time. Like, they're not saying this is number one on that list. The greatest wrestling match of all time becomes a celebration
Yeah,
of
well,
pro
similar. The
wrestling.
Boneyard match was a love letter to the Undertaker's career, and the Funhouse match was kind of the same thing for John Cena's career. And then Edge and Randy went kind of the opposite, where they created a love letter to all of professional wrestling.
Right, right. And it was really weird to me that a lot of people didn't, even experts, didn't really go with that. They were still having the conversation. Well, I mean, it was a very good match. I don't know about the greatest match. It's like, no, that's not. You're kind of missing the point here, I think.
Yeah, you're falling for the marketing
Right,
instead
right. It's a
of
very, very literal interpretation.
yeah, no, it was a great one though. That thing, I mean, just haven't. I'm sad that Edge got injured because he was doing such great work, and obviously Randy Orton's probably like the best wrestler working right now.
Yeah.
So they've been amazing. I'm just excited to see what Randy and Drew do.
What do you think of Big E's single push? I'll tell you, for me, my whole thing, I've been campaigning for it. I've been talking about it on the podcast. I've been tweeting about it. I feel like Big E needs to maintain the essence of Big E, but still make it change. So like, so we can see an aesthetic evolve. He's evolving away from New Day Big E into singles Big E without becoming a different person. I feel like that's done very simply. Lose the singlet, just wear trunks. And to me, the trunks should be tie-dye. I don't know. I'm locked into it. I think Big E wearing tie-dye trunks is like, you could see my physique now. You take me seriously, but no, I'm still here to party. I still got tie-dye on. Blue and hot pink tie-dye trunks on a guy that you take seriously. I feel like that's money to me. I think that there's a lot of potential in a Big E singles thing. And I really like that it is happening organically, that it is not somebody turning on somebody in the New Day having to break up or whatever, that you still kind of keep the New Day together, but Big E is able to have this opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, anytime I've come on your podcast, I've always used it as an avenue to push for a Big E singles run. So I feel partially responsible. But I agree with you. I think with any type of, just thinking about it character-wise and TV-wise, you want to show growth. You want to show a change. And I love it not coming at the expense of the partnership, because to me it's better to have it like, hey, this is a brotherhood and I can go off and do my own thing, and it doesn't mean we turn on each other. That to me is a played out scenario. But I do think, yeah, I would like to see not necessarily a more serious Big E, but just something that does show. I think a outfit change, some type of appearance change would do that. Even if he kept the singlet, I would probably change the color of it. I would change my I would just change my color scheme to show that I was separating myself from the pack, so that I wasn't dressed the same as Kofi and Xavier.
Right. Maybe tie-dye trunks?
I'm open to it if he wants to gorgeous George it, if he wants to.
Okay, as long as you're open to it. I'm open to it too. I saw you actually tweeting about Kamala, sending an RIP to Kamala. I mean, I'll tell you about Kamala. First of all, when you talk about characters, like unforgettable, and one of those characters I was legitimately terrified of as a kid. But also, while he didn't have the most varied offense, shall we say, there were some real athletic moments. His leapfrog, the air that he would get on that leapfrog was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, no, I look at it in a lot of ways. As such a talented performer and great wrestler, and the fact that as a kid he scared the crap out of me, and it was a character that I believed in, and then as I get older and I'm aware kind of like of the stereotypes and the racist backgrounds that character stems from, and I think about the weight that he had to carry in order to like, oh, if this is how I have to make it in this industry. And I'm not saying that he hated this role or he loved this role. I don't know. I've never met the man, but I just think about the fact that I'm able as a comedian and an actor now to more like choose what I want to do and perform what I want to do and choose the type of way I present myself. And I look at people like Mr. Harris and the things he's done as sacrifices so that I don't have to paint stars on my titties and act like I'm a cannibal, you know?
Yeah.
So I appreciate him.
And isn't it kind of like remarkable too that not only did he have that awareness of like this is the world that I live in, this is what I have to do, but he then was able to be like, the best thing that I can do is perform this to a level where it gets beyond the stereotype, where it gets like this. I need to this character becomes an icon, so it actually transcends the thing, this sort of like, you know, prejudice idea that it was formed around. I'm going to make this character an icon.
Yeah. You
and
could
transcend
choose.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people, if you put that character on them, they're going to be like, hey, fuck you, da, 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 and they would have been out of the business.
Yeah.
B, there's a lot of people who would have wilted under it and would have just done it and would have been a footnote. And then it takes, I think, an extremely strong and extremely talented person to get beyond that and go, hey, I'm going to own this character and I'm going to turn it into something amazing. And I mean, there's a Kamala action figure in my background. So like he's definitely a legendary in the character that I remember, my mom remembers, you know, that all wrestling fans remember, and that's a mark of his great work, I believe, more than, you know, anybody who created that character.
Oh, 100%. That, yeah, he gets 100% of the credit for what that character did. Yeah, I'm with you. Did you start when you started podcasting, right? And you realize like, okay, I'm going to turn my office into a studio, which means the decoration is going to be not just for me now, but it's going to be the messaging, right, that I send out. Because I remember like I watched you when you first started getting better. I was like, oh, okay, I see a couple little wrestling toys hanging out here. And like over the amount of time that you've been doing the show, if you go through, you can see the collection start to grow and grow and grow and grow. And I'm like, he got bit by the bug. Did you start to kind of grow that collection when you were like, okay, like I have a place where I'm, you know, going to have this visual YouTube podcast. I need to show up here. I need to have some items in this collection that people are like, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you were always a big inspiration from the moment I came into your house, and so just mostly it's still, I have a very small collection by comparison, but it's just that it used to be all a bookshelf that was full of books and then a couple of wrestling figures, and now all the books have been pushed into the closet, and and all the wrestling figures are out in front because I love. Not just, and I'll often move them around a little bit just so that the ones that are visible change up. So that if there are like real wrestling fans watching, they can see like, oh, Ron went and got this figure or that figure, you know, he's got the Chris Jericho bubbly bottle, you know, like that.
Yeah.
I just love adding little Easter eggs and stuff like that. I just think it's fun.
Yeah, it does. Like, that's a good point that if you have if you could have like the WCW Chris Jericho figure on display, right? And that means that like, oh, he's an old school wrestling fan. But then if you end up getting that AEW Chris Jericho figure, it's like, oh, he's one of us today. It's sending those messages out that even if your podcast doesn't have anything to do with wrestling, and it's like, oh, no. That's like I see Roman Reigns up there. I don't just see Stone Cold up there. Yeah,
I'm active, not retired.
Yeah, I think, but I mean, I like it. I think that you're right when you're like, you know, you have the books up there for a while, but I mean, for me, I feel like it got to a point when I was like, it's either got to be all or nothing. Most of me is all or nothing. Like that, I feel like I have an on-off switch, not a dimmer switch, where it's just like I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it. And it got to a point, probably as early as college, where I would have like toys way past when you're supposed to have toys, and people would be like, "You still buy toys, huh?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, there's hundreds of them, and I will continue to do it." And it's like, you know, you either have to completely own it. Like you can't hide it and just do it a little bit. Either you completely own it and be like, this is who I am and this is what makes me happy.
Yeah, why would you ever hide who you truly are? That's not any way to live. And I think, you're one of the prime examples of that. Like, I've known you for so long now, and you've always been just outspoken on what you love and what you're interested in, and unabashed about it. You've always been like, hey, I'm a WWE shill. I love, this is what I love. This is what I grew up in. And you took that fandom and your expertise and your work ethic, and you turned that into a job and money. And to me, like, that's gotta feel good, even when everything is stressful and when things are going away. And I'm sure, like everybody else, you lost some money in all the deals and everything's going on, but that stress is always there no matter what. But it's easier to deal with when you love what you do, as opposed to like hating it and hiding who you are and then still having to deal with this, you know?
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. Like, even on like a microcosm level of within the wrestling community and the internet. If I had decided, like, okay, the internet doesn't like me because because I like WWE so much, but I'm not doing that to impress anybody. I'm just doing that because that's who I am. Like, I think about, like, I could have kind of squashed that down and like hyped up the internet stuff and hyped up anything that's not WWE or whatever. And I know that while, maybe Reddit would have been like, yeah, Sam's a pretty cool guy, I'd be sitting there going like, I wish I could just talk about the stuff that I like. Like, I'd be turning off my cameras and stuff, and I wouldn't be turning on New Japan. I'd be watching like WrestleMania 7 again and be like, everybody says this sucks, but this doesn't suck. I would never say it, but this doesn't suck so much.
Yeah, I was doing an interview with Ron Bennington. I think who we both, Bennington, right? I assume.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And so, and as I do, and since I know he knows so much about comedy, anytime I talk to him, I pay extra attention.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he said to me, which really struck me, was that he's like, you're such a good comedian, and it must have been difficult for you to stay who you are, and there must have been a lot of comedians trying to beat that out of you with your optimism and the way that you see the world, to kind of mold you into what they felt a comic was. And he just gave me this compliment. He's like, must have took a lot of strength for you to maintain who you are. And because of that, now that was the reason he was interviewing me, because I'm in the TV show and a movie and this and that. And it comes from the fact that you're a little different. There's, if you confirm so much, you are a dime a dozen. They can get anybody else. Like, well, that guy looks nicer, so I'm gonna pick this guy, But when you're truly you and you're truly unique and you're providing your product, either they're going to want Sam or they don't. There's no second place. They either have to get Sam Roberts or there's nobody else.
Isn't that amazing for you though, when someone like Ron Bennington like points that out? Like, that you don't have to say, like, do you know I'm doing this? That somebody like that just observes you and then says it because they noticed it without you having to directly tell them. Like, that's got to be an amazing feeling.
Oh, it felt very amazing. I came down and told my wife, because I was just like, that she wasn't that familiar with Bennington. I go like, no, baby, you don't understand. Like, he talks to every comedian. He knows everyone. He knows, if he's told me this as a compliment, he meant it, and it was for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it really struck me, and so I truly appreciated it.
Next time you talk to Ron Bennington too, he's got wrestling stories.
Yeah, well, yeah. Gail tells me a story about them living next to Macho Man and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He's got stories about Bobby Heenan, Macho Man. And if you go, there's one of the pay-per-views, one of the WCW pay-per-views on the network. It was in Florida. This is when, like, I think it was still Ron and Ron, or maybe it was Ron and Fez. I don't know. But there's this match that they did before the pay-per-view. And they air a clip of it like, oh, before the pay-per-view, we had Ron and Fez here. And you see Fez, and he's in a tag team called the Sissy Boys. And it's Fez and somebody else. And they're wrestling this match. And Ron Bennington is outside the ring being like a heel manager and hitting somebody with his cane. Instead, it's the greatest thing ever. I'll figure out what pay-per-view it is and tell you which one so you can find it. But
yeah, I'd love to talk to him about that.
they air this clip of it, and it's awesome. Speaking of people from the outside world, I suppose, do you keep up with NXT? Do you watch NXT?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth. I've been mostly watching Dynamite recently, but I've been keeping up because Keith Lee, love him, champion. Gotta keep up with that. Karrion Kross, scary looking guy. So
yeah. Karrion Kross, man, that intro. Don't you just watch that guy come out and go, I can't wait. That's probably the number one thing I'm looking forward to seeing with fans back in a building.
Oh, absolutely.
Karrion Kross's intro.
Oh, I mean, just like we were talking about Bam Bam and Luna, him and Scarlett together, that's just like money, and you can totally see. Like, it's so funny, again, because we talk about development. You remember a few years ago when he was trying to get out of his Impact contract so much, and how much different his life must have been, where he's like, I don't know what I'm doing and everything's crazy and I'll take this shitty contract, and then 6 months later, they're like, what are you doing? Everybody wants you.
What?
Oh, I didn't know I was good.
I mean, that does, and it's really, really tough, especially like the younger you are, I feel like, but learning when to say no, even when you're not like it's not a matter of when to pick the right thing. It's a matter of learning when to just say no and have faith that a better thing will somehow come. I mean, that is a tough thing to do. But, it can be real. It if you're smart and you know who you are and you're good, like it really is a skill that people need to develop.
Oh, yeah, having faith in yourself and not jumping at the first thing. I remember a few years in when a couple people wanted to manage me, but they were like, it was a red flag because, first of all, they were from San Francisco, and I was like, well, I feel like my manager should live in L.A. or New York. That just feels like the right thing. Who are you going to talk to? The punchline? Like, that's...
Yeah. I can call the punchline. Like, that's just one club.
Yeah. But there's also that part you go, oh, well, these people are interested in me. These people are interested in me, and they think that I could be something. But I think if you're smart, you kind of go like, well, that if they see it, that must just mean like other people will see it too. And I need to wait until I find the right match for me. And I've been lucky because I talked to so many of my peers and coworkers who have, horrible manager stories and this and that. And I've been with my manager from day one, since like 8 years ago, and I've never changed. And unless she retires, I don't ever see that changing. And I think it just comes from that. We're talking about just being patient and having faith in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen?
You want to talk about Cameron Grimes too? I'm sorry for interrupting.
He's in a 5-way ladder match.
Oh, I'm excited. I hope he wins it. I love him. Oh man, I love him since when he was Trevor Lee.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
Flipping his body around those tiny Rosita rooms.
Yes.
Or I guess singular room, right? That one spot. Yeah.
VFW Hall. Yeah. Yep. Now he's really seemed like he's found his character there, and he's doing very well.
He loves that hat. He can't. I mean, he loves that hat, though. I feel like if he didn't love that hat so much, he'd probably see more opportunities for himself because he makes mistakes. He makes mistakes when he tries to save his hat. Like, buy a couple of them. Have a spare.
Yeah, that's like if I came in the ring with really nice sneakers.
Yep.
If you just put a crease in them, I'm like, well, time out.
Trust me, I know. I would have a pair of sneakers where I'm like, look, they need to be nice because I'm going to be on TV, but not so nice that they'll distract me from my match. You need to find that middle ground because otherwise you end up in trouble. But what do you think of the Pat McAfee and Adam Cole stuff that's been happening on NXT?
I mean, it's interesting. My initial thing is always like, just be like, I just try to be patient. I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I know Pat McAfee is a big wrestling fan. I know he's a very charismatic guy. Like, I watch his sports show on YouTube every now and again, and I always find him be very interesting. And then it always, it reminds me of the Bam Bam Bigelow LT thing where I'm just like, oh, where is it going? And what does it mean for Adam Cole after is what all I get concerned about.
You don't want Adam Cole to get the old Bam Bam treatment after.
No, not at all. But I don't also, it doesn't upset me like I particularly didn't really enjoy Rob Gronkowski being around, and or Tyson Fury, because I thought it just made their opponents look weak, and because it wasn't like you ever looked at Rob and go, wow, that guy's a great wrestler and he's doing it. It's just like, this clumsy mother, he's beating everybody. But I think Pat's been doing some training, and I think if any one of these things is going to surprise us and actually end up being good for both of them, this is the one.
So you're hoping Pat McAfee is less LT, more Steve Mongo McMichael.
Yes, Kevin Green even.
Kevin Green. Kevin Green. Yeah, every in WCW, it's all because of that Last Dance doc. Everybody talks about how Karl Malone wrestled. Everybody talks about Dennis Rodman. They bring up Jay Leno. Nobody brings up poor Kevin Green.
No, he was out there just doing it because he wanted to.
Yeah. I do like with the Pat McAfee, Adam Cole thing that the roles have seemingly reversed, that Pat McAfee is being portrayed as the outsider who doesn't respect wrestling, and Adam Cole is kind of the good guy, supportive of the business person. I feel like that's an angle that hasn't necessarily been explored in all these celebrity athlete type matches.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that, and I hope it leads to a nice babyface run for Adam Cole, because I've never met him, but I've seen him from afar. I've seen him interact with people, and I see how people respond to him, and he reminds me similar to Daniel Bryan, or I'll just stick with Daniel Bryan. It's just that people love him. Like they fall in love with just doing the Adam Cole baby, and sometimes people just have this hidden charisma that doesn't even showcase in like what he looks like. He looks like a regular guy, but that is one of the characters of wrestling, an everyman, a person that you can see yourself in, a person that is a good guy, nice guy, hangs out with his girlfriend, plays Halo all the time, and just wants to be good at his job. Like that's a character that I can get behind, and I think that might be the better role for him, just because we don't ever want to get all the size, but it's easier to be an undersized babyface than an undersized heel for sure.
Yeah, and vice versa. I mean, it's easier to be an oversized heel than it is to be an oversized baby. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Just the rules of psychology. And you're right. There is this thing of when you look at somebody like Adam Cole or Daniel Bryan, you go, whether it's true or not, you go, if I work really hard, I could become that guy. If I become the athlete that they are. But you can't do that with somebody who's 6'7". You're like, I could work as hard as I want. I'm not that big. That guy is something else.
Exactly. So I'm very hopeful for it, and I'm gonna just trust that it goes well and doesn't Grobkowski me.
Well, that's you again. That's you being an optimist, right? That's you going. And then I mean, it's the same thing for fans. Like I wish that more fans would publicly go like, no, I watch wrestling because I like wrestling. Like not like, yeah, I watch it, but this sucks and that sucks. You're like, well, let's just see if it sucks first. It's okay. If something sucks, it's okay to say that it sucks, but I don't like it when people say something sucks before it has a chance to suck.
And I think we've always been waiting for this time. It's so weird now because like, oh, we need alternative, and then now people seem to be trying to pick apart the alternative every day and go, and I just feel lucky that pretty much every day of the week there's a wrestling I can watch, and if I'm not feeling one particular product, like I hadn't necessarily been feeling Raw and SmackDown that much, but I can watch NXT, I can watch AEW, I can watch Impact. Sometimes I don't want to watch Impact, I can watch New Japan. Sometimes SmackDown gets amazing again and I want to watch SmackDown. So it's just nice to be able to pick and choose, and I don't have. What's been great for me is starting to limit how much wrestling I watch. I was like, let's just keep it to 2 to 3 hours a week instead of watching everything. That's been helpful for me.
But then you try to keep it to 2 or 3 hours a week, and somebody tells you Eddie Kingston is on your TV. You're like, what?
I'm watching. I'm watching these GCW fight TV pay-per-views just because I want to see wrestling with an audience. That's been very nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've had a conversation before, I think, about you limiting your wrestling because you realized that, I think that you and I have a thing in common where we have trouble, like just letting a hobby be a hobby. Like you want to
Mm-hmm.
go all in, like you want to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of it. And you have your two passions in life, really. I mean, you have aside from your family, of course, you have comedy, you have wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to wrestling school and we talked about all that and everything. Is there now something that you'd like to do within the wrestling business or see like, oh, I could do that, or I could have fun doing this, or I could contribute in that way? Or do you really like the idea of being a fan who's a professional comedian and that's it? Because there is a beauty in that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more of the latter.
Mm-hmm.
I love being a fan, and the more that I started to get involved in things, the more I was like, oh, this is they're all weird businesses, and I don't know if I want to take the time to learn this one. So, but I think I love still commentating on things when people will allow me to come and commentate. If they ever ask me, whether it be WWE, AEW, or anyone that reaches out to me and they want me to do a sketch or anything, I'm like, yeah, I love wrestling, so I would love to be involved. But I think, if anything, it'll be about me merging those two worlds, of me
Yeah.
kind of like writing a comedy that showcases some of my favorite wrestling personalities, or the WWE has been getting more into scripted shows, and sometimes they've reached out to me about coming up with different projects, and so I could see us working together in that way.
And that goes right back to what we've been talking about this whole time. That's when it's like, I'm not trying to do something that fits into WWE or pro wrestling mold. It's just, I know who I am, and let's find a way where we can synergize, where
Absolutely,
you can take what I do
absolutely.
and do the thing.
Because again, it's the Joe Rogan, just being about what you love. Because people that, and I know I go back to it, but people are all like, "Oh, well, he's the biggest this," and it's like, do you think Joe Rogan got into UFC because he was like, one day this is going to be the biggest sport in the world, and it's going to allow me the opportunity to, he was just, I love this, and so this is what I want to be involved in,
Yeah.
and I try to do the same, whether it's wrestling or my video games with my Twitch channel and anything that I love. I know you're very much the same. I just want to make my life about the things that I love and enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, we live in atypical times, and you talked about cinematic matches and everything. You are doing something very similar to that in the world of comedy. There's a big live streaming event coming up September 5th on YouTube, where people can get the Ron Funches experience. Yes.
Yes, they can get their Ron Funches fix, and I can get my fix of comedy because I've been missing it, especially during the summer. That's my favorite time to tour, and this year we've been unable to tour, so we're going to bring my live show into your home. I've partnered up with Christopher Titus from the show Titus. And his production company, and we're gonna live stream out a show on YouTube. We'll be in front of a live audience of 10 people, socially distanced. It'll be kind of a lot like those GCW shows where it's a small crowd, safely socially distanced, and then everyone else can watch from the comfort of their own home. Tickets are only $10, and they're ronpunches.com. I mean, come on. That is no drink minimum, no pants minimum.
What?
Come on.
Come on.
You got to, it's like foolish not to buy a ticket.
You'd be an idiot not to. You'd be a moron not to be a part of this thing and to be there. And by the way, I'm so glad you brought up GCW because I'll tell you that we had David Arquette on the radio show on Jim and Sam, and truly, the main reason when I'm sitting there going like, oh, I mean, I love David Arquette, especially because of how much he loves wrestling, and I got a chance to see the documentary that's coming out, and it's such a great documentary for wrestling fans and for non-wrestling fans. But really, as a wrestling fan, I was like, this is just such a great way to show the business. But it was really because I was going over like, okay, if I talk to David Arquette, I can get a Nick Gage and a GCW reference on the main show, on the serious show. When else am I going to be able to talk about Nick Gage on Jim and Sam? Like, this is good.
I want to get Nick Gage on my podcast. I want to get him on Getting Better because he's been getting better. I want to know about it.
He has been getting better, and I swear that's funny with the David Arquette thing because I was afraid of Nick Gage even before he went away because I was doing like commentary for Jersey All Pro. and that's when he was doing the Hillbilly Wrecking Crew.
Mm-hmm.
And like you'd look around and Luke Harper was in it when he was well, I guess he's Brody Lee again now, but he was the original Brody Lee, and he was in it and the whole thing. And like I knew him, and I'm like, he's a good guy. But I look at Nick Gage, and I'm like, I don't know if this is real or if this is wrestling. I'm afraid of that man. As an adult, I'm afraid of that man.
Yes.
And the only time I've seen an ounce of humanity in him, first of all, his cameo is the best things on Cameo, but it was the David Arquette match. When he realized that David Arquette was like not wrestling anymore, you know, when like David Arquette snapped and like he was grabbing his neck and stuff. And Nick Gage had this look like, don't start fighting me for real. Like, I don't want to have to hurt you. But it was like this real, like sympathetic look. Like, I don't want to kill you, David Arquette. You got to stop. And I was like, there's the real Nick Gage. What a sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I think he's one of the best, like, example when I think of like pro wrestler and what it meant to me when I was a kid of like not knowing what's real and what's not. Like Nick Gage is that 100%. He seems like a complete psychopath. I don't know if that is a real gang or not, and that should be on a government watch list. But at the same time, he's so charismatic, and I want to support him and love him. And if he gets locked up again, I'll be there to help bail him out.
That's right. That's right. Well, support Ron Funches. You can get all the info on the September 5th show on all of his social media at Ron Funches. And, of course, the Getting Better podcast where everybody's getting better. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's always great, Ron. Thank you, man.
No, it's a pleasure talking with you, Sam. I hope the ever-growing family is well, and I think I'm going to come on and talk to you and Jim. So
fantastic.
We'll talk together again soon.
Excellent, man. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, brother.